It's that time of year again. The nights are drawing in. Fish are getting harder to catch. So today we've come down to Lindholme Lakes. We've asked Alex Dockerty to take us through some tips that he uses when waggler fishing to get those extra bites. We've come onto the Loco Lake at Lindholme Lakes where there's some big fish. And we've asked Alex if he can catch us one of those fish. How's it gone today, Alex?
We've had a good day in the end, really. We've been rather cold this morning, shall we say. The sun's come high in the sky. We've had a few bites on both the waggler rods, both the setups, and yeah, it's come good in the end. We've had a few bites and nicked a couple of nice fish, haven't we?
So this morning when we got here, the wind was cutting across the lake and it honestly felt like December. It's actually the first day of October today. 3 hours later the sun came up and it felt like a lovely summer's August day. Now Alex is the on-site coach here and he teaches a lot of people. So if Alex doesn't know how to catch these fish, nobody does. So today Alex has had 2 rods set up. Do you want to talk us through both of those rods?
Yeah, so the first of the rods is the 11-foot Vertex. Absolutely perfect for this sort of stepped up commercial fishing for big fish. Firstly, that's been to a 4-pound reel line, which I think is very important, especially when you're fishing with lighter floats. Helps you keep your line tight and obviously makes the lighter wagglers easier to cast. And the second rod's been the 12-foot, just slightly stepped up with 6-pound reel line, just so it'll work better with the heavier wagglers.
Yep.
Hook length wise, both rods have been 019 supplex fluorocarbon to a 14 B911X in a band.
Fantastic. And what size pellet have you been fishing on those?
I've alternated really between an 8mm and a 6mm. When I was catching the carp earlier this morning, the 8mm were definitely better, but as the day's gone on, we've seen the odd F1 turning over in the peg, the odd swirl, and the 6mm by far being the best bait. You've just not missed as many bites as you were with the 8mm.
Now I've noticed just how many times you've changed Pellet Waggler today. You must have changed a dozen times. What's the reason behind that?
For me, if you relate your waggler fishing to pole fishing, so you'd never go in and slap a 2-3 gram pole rig. So
makes sense.
The lighter the waggler you can fish, more natural it is, the less disturbance, and you're going to get more bites. And
it certainly worked, I've noticed that. I noticed as well when there was a crosswind came up, you changed from the 11-foot to the 12-foot just to punch it through the wind?
Yeah, mainly to cut through the wind, and also I need to fish a heavier waggler when conditions are like that to keep my line tight. And also the extra length of the rod just aids you with your line pickup if you have that slight bow form.
So keeping a tight line is pretty important when pellet waggler fishing?
Yeah, again relating it back to your pole fishing, say you're fishing shallow, it's all about keeping your line tight between your pole tip and your float. This is the same principle but just at a bigger distance.
Brilliant. So I've noticed today just how often you've changed depth as well, only probably 6 inches either way. Best depth today catching was?
Probably around 3.5 foot I'd have said. When this morning when the fish weren't feeding as confidently, we were having to hang the bait there, be quite patient, feeding over the top of the float. I'd say around 4 foot was the best step, and in the end we've ended up fishing 3 foot deep and catching them on the splashes. We've really started competing for the bait.
And today you've had fish up to probably over 10 pounds, if not as big as 12 pounds.
Yeah, had a couple of nice carp later on in the day when we've started to feed quite aggressively, and some nice big F1s thrown in as well.
And it was obvious today as well, the way you were changing bait. So you started on an 8mm, you went down to 6mm, but you also, one of your little tricks was to put a little wafter on at one point.
Yeah, just that changing the rate that your bait falls. Obviously it's helping balance against your hook. Sometimes just nicks you an odd fish. It's not always a be all and end all, but an odd bite here and there can make all the difference.
Well, the night's obviously drawing out. I can see the lights fading pretty quick now. It's been a pleasure to watch you today. You've certainly taught me a few things and hopefully I can take those into the Winter League that's down here. So thank you very much for your time today, Alex. It's been extremely enjoyable.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.